What is up, people? My name is Alex, and I'm the coach of the Toronto Star Raptors for Season 1 of the NES League. This is just a quick breakdown of what I drafted and why I drafted it. So first things first, I thought about what I wanted my first pick to be. For a long time, I was debating getting my Mega first, and I was really trying to decide between Mega Altaria, because I loved it last season, or switching it up and going for Mega Lopunny, but I ultimately decided I didn't want to get my Mega first. I love Mega Altaria, but I didn't want to necessarily go with it again. So I wanted something that could be bulky, could kind of cleric, a defog, wall break, just very versatile Pokemon, which is why I ultimately went with Latias. And for all those reasons, it is an excellent defogger. Uh, it has pretty good special attack and really good special defense, so I can run it kind of bulky, and also gets access to Healing Wish, so I can bring it as kind of a last-ditch cleric mon in certain weeks if I feel my opponent's is gonna. If there's one Pokemon I really need to keep healthy throughout the whole match, and so I needed a mon that paired defensively with Latias, so my second pick was Tentacruel, or KY, the Tentacruel. Um, it resists Bug, which uh, Latias is weak to. It also resists Fairy and Ice. It doesn't resist Dragon or Ghost, but I have other mons to deal with that. And Tentacruel is weak to Ground, which Latias is immune to. It's also weak to Electric, which Latias is immune to, and Psychic, which Latias is immune to. So they pair really good defensively, and then on top of that, Tentacruel gives me access to T-Spikes. It's a rapid spinner if I want to bring my own hazards and I don't want to have to rely on Latias for defog, so lets up pressure there. Scald, well, one of the best moves in the game. Knockoff, another one of the best moves in the game. It gets access to both, as well as a good poison stab. Also, it has 100 base speed, which for a wall Pokemon is crazy good. It's a lot faster than you think it would, so I could actually bring a Modest Choice Specs one week if I felt like it. I kind of prepared a little too much for that last season, but um, so it's just versatile. It can play so many roles, and I really think that Tentacruel is going to be a good bulky water for my team. Now, this next pick, I kind of screwed up here. I wanted to get my defensive core locked in, which is why I originally wanted to draft Tangrowth. But during the draft, I was looking at the Tier 2s, and I realized there weren't a whole lot of Tier 2s I wanted. So I figured maybe I'll get an offensive threat early on, because my team was Latias. I was planning to bring more defensively. I wanted something that was a designated attacker, and I thought Tangrowth wouldn't go before my next pick, so I actually went with Entei. I'm really liking what Dan is using Entei for in the what is that PPL? Sacred Fire, super powerful physical fire stab with a 50% chance to burn is just too good to pass up. It also gives me an E-speeder, which is really good, and it's a fire type with access to Iron Head, which means I can switch it into a fairy if I feel like I'm having problems, and it's just another fairy check, which is really good. And then again, E-speed, Sacred Fire, Bulldoze, Stone Edge. It's just a super powerful attacker, and I just wanted it on my team. And so, unfortunately, because I drafted Entei, Crazy stole Tangrowth from me, which was unfortunate. And so I was looking at the board, and I'm like, okay, well, what else could I draft? I kind of wanted the grass type to kind of make a fire, water, grass core with Entei and Tentacruel. And I really wanted Tangrowth because it had Regenerator. So when I was looking at the board, I ultimately ended up going with Amoonguss, or Cordyceps here. So it gets access to Regenerator, which is one of my favorite abilities. It also gets access to Clear Smog, so I can use it as a wall to prevent setup sweepers. It also gets access to Spore Another one of the best status moves in the game. 100% accurate sleep. Don't sleep on that. It's very versatile. Joey used it really well in the UCL, and it's got some decent bulk to it, and it might not take every hit that great because its defenses are a little subpar, but when you put some investment in that and you pair it with Regenerator, I can use it very effectively as a pivot mon if I switch it in on the right threats. So at this point in the draft, I was looking around and I was kind of at a loss. I had no idea what I wanted to pick, and I realized that one of my MVPs from my two MVPs last season were Latias and Globherm in the Uniclus, so I had to scoop him up. I couldn't let him go. It gets access. It also is another Regenerator Mon, which is something I was thinking about. I kind of wanted to have a Regenerator core with a lot of switching, even though I don't have a single Mon with the switching move yet. But just like offensive switching, and it also gets access to Magic Guard, which is really good. You can use it with a Life Orb and give it super strong power. It can switch in on rocks. It doesn't care about your entry-level hazards. I can use it as a status sponge and not have to worry about it. And Trick Room also allows it to sweep teams that wouldn't necessarily anticipate it. It has excellent coverage. It gets Shadow Ball, Psychic, Psyshock, Signal Beam, Flash Cannon, Energy Ball. And if I put a little bit of investment into it, it will take any hit you can give it and then hit you back way harder. I really fell in love with Uniclus last season, and I knew I dreamed of having it on my team. I didn't think it would be a good pick because of Latias, but at this point in the draft, I was just, it was a bulky attacker, which is something my team kind of needed. I have Latias, which again could be a bulky attacker, but I'm mostly planning it to be a special type wall. Entei is just not all that bulky, so I kind of wanted to add a little more bulk. And so at this point of the draft, I was looking at the board, and I was like, shit, I waited too long to get a fairy. There are not very many good fairies left. And so I was looking at the board, and I was worried about that until I realized I still hadn't made my mega pick, and there was still one mega fairy on the board, Mega Diancie, or Beyonce here. Now, I've never used Mega Diancie, but I'm excited to give it a try. It's very fast. It's got excellent attack stats. It's just all around very good. Little low on the HP side, but that's okay. I'm mostly going to be using it as an attacker and also as a Magic Bounce user to kind of prevent people from getting spikes on my team, or entry-level hazards on my team. Probably not the biggest concern for me because I do have Tentacruel and Latias, an excellent spinner and an excellent defogger. But so that kind of opens me up to not having to necessarily bring those two moves and those two mons and making them more versatile if I know how to use Diancie properly. And then also maybe I don't have to bring my own entry-level hazards. I can kind of use the opponent's moves against them. So that's kind of what I'm planning for Diancie. I just really needed a fairy. The two cores you want, Fire, Water, Grass, Dragon, Fairy, Steel. So now I have 5 out of 6 of those types. So my synergy of my types is really coming together at this point. So at this point in the draft, I realized, like I said, I wanted some switchers. I wanted some Pokemon with Volt Switch, U-Turn, and that's why I ultimately went with Electros here, because it gets both those moves. It's bulky. It's a slow Volt Switcher, which I know a lot of people really put a lot of emphasis on fast electric types. They're very good in the format, but I don't think that a slow Volt Turn can also be overlooked, because I can put an Assault Vest on it, I can make it defensive, and I can sponge up a hit. I get Giga Drain, so I can end Drain Punch, so I can recoup my health later. And because I switch slower, I can use that to get the advantage and apply pressure to my opponent by switching in a Mond that is super effective and then just punishing it with things like I have moves like Knock Off on a lot of my Pokemon, or just super powerful stabs that they can't really deal with. Entei Sacred Fire, for instance, Diance's Moonblast. And so I can use Unagi to kind of get that switch in. And because it's an electric type that also has U-turn, it's that switching ability is not hindered by ground types. So that's mostly what I was thinking with Electrosierra or Unagi. Um, it's one of the picks I'm a little more questionable about, and I might end up trading it later. But I thought I'd give it a try. And the same can be said for our next Pokemon, Egret the Sneasel. Um, I love Weavile in OU. I was really thinking about drafting it, but I knew that I wanted my tier 1 to be Latias. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to waste the points on Weavile. So I was looking at the board, and I ultimately decided, well, Sneasel is just a discount Weevil. It's not as fast, and it doesn't hit as hard, but 95 attack is still nothing to sneeze at, and 115 speed is an excellent speed tier. So I can put a Life Orb on it. I can make it Choice Bandit. I can make it Choice Scarf, and use it to kind of clean up weaker mons at the end of a match that people might not be expecting it. Its two stab types are Dark and Ice, which are amazing. Stab, Icicle Crash, Stab, Knockoff. It gets access to Poison Jab, so I can take on fairies with it. It gets priority in Fake Out and Ice Shard. Low Kick for Steel types. It just has very good coverage, and it's not as strong as Weavile, but I feel like for a tier 5 pick, it's probably one of the hardest hitters in the tier, or that most versatile hitters in the tier anyway. So at this point, I had filled up all my required tiers, and I just had 3 free agents to pick up. And because I picked Mega Diancie, I got an extra 40 points. So I could afford another tier 1 Mon if I wanted. I could either get 1 tier 1 or 2 tier 2s. And unfortunately, tier 2 was kind of picked clean at this point. So I was looking at tier 1. I still needed a steel type, and Skarmory was still on the board at this point, but I didn't want another defogger, especially since I had Mega Diancie. It seemed a little unnecessary. And so I ultimately looked and saw that there was another Regenerator Mom there in Tornadus T, our Avion here. Again, another Regenerator who has access to U-turn, so I can really take advantage of the fact that 3 of my Mons have Regenerator. I can make a core that just, if I put the right items on it, like Leftovers or Assault Vest, I can make it super bulky and just keep switching and applying pressure, keeping my Mons healthy. And then using things like Latias's Healing Wish, or taking advantage of Magic Guard on Reuniclus, I can sponge up statuses that will keep my team healthy. And then also, just look at that speed. 121 is an excellent speed stat. I can outspeed most anything. Like, you're not going to be outspeeding me unless you have a Choice Scarf for most things. So I can really use it along with those really good attack stats to kind of use it to apply pressure. Gets Knockoff, Superpower, Icy Wind, Hurricane, Air Slash, Heat Wave. Just an all-around great Mon. I couldn't believe it was still on the board, so I figured I'd scoop it up. And then that left me with 140 points. So I could either get a tier 3 and a tier 5, or 2 tier 4s. And looking at the tier 3s, I knew I still needed a steel type to fill up my core. And there weren't really any steel type tier 3s or tier 5s I wanted. In fact, there weren't any tier 5s at all I wanted. So I figured I'd kind of comb through tier 4 and find what I could find. And I was leaning towards Magneton, and that might still be a switch I make later. But I ultimately decided to go with Colossus, the Registeel. I didn't really have a lot of Stealth Rocks on this team other than Mega Diancie, and that was a problem for me. I have T-Spikes, but I wanted another entry hazard setter. So that's why I ended up getting Registeel here. Excellent bulk, 150 in both defenses. It'll take any hit. If I put an Assault Vest on it, you're not touching this thing, and I can afford to invest in attack. And then it finishes that last core I was looking for on my team. So I'm kind of hoping, I'm not super hopeful for this one yet, but I think I can make it work. It's my favorite Reggie also, so that's also kind of the reason I went with it. And then last but not least, my last round pick was Blue the Sock. Has sturdy and mold breaker, two excellent abilities, so I can either, take it like you're sturdy and your levitate, etc. They don't mean anything to me. I can hit Wheezing with an earthquake. I can hit Latias with an earthquake. And it kind of, some immunities that people might take advantage, I can negate them, which is kind of what I'm hoping for. It also has excellent coverage. I get Poison Jab, Ice Punch, Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, Close Combat, Knockoff, Poison Jab, Stone Edge, Earthquake, any physical stab type attack that's worth having, Blue gets. Pair that with 125 speed and a Choice Scarf, and this thing is going to put in the work. I'm really excited for it, and just its coverage in general. And so that's my team. I'm actually very happy with how this team turned out. Once I finished the draft, I wasn't super confident in it, but once I started trying to team build for my first week match, I realized, wow, I can bring almost all these mons, and they put in the work. So, like I said, there are a couple of these mons that, they're kind of on a tentative basis. I'm going to bring them to a couple matches, and we'll see how they do. But other than that, I'm very happy with this team. I think it has good synergy. I'm a little light on entry hazards for my liking. I would have liked to get something with spikes. But again, if I take advantage of Mega Diancie and then maybe a free agent pick or two, I might be able to clean that up a little bit better. But anyway, that was it for today. Just a nice quick breakdown of my team. I didn't really want to reveal too much of what I'm thinking about building. But anyway, if you guys have any suggestions on what I could have drafted that would have made this better, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. And I'm looking forward to our first week match. Go